Sometimes I would be walking ever so, quietly, because I knew that if he noticed me, I might be target. And then there it was, that I would be the target, and he would want to attack me. And I get really scared because his eyes look like he's gonna attack me, and I'm like, no! And then all you guys would
we'd all hold him down,
hold him,
like, go, Mom, go!
And he's like, he has all four of you, and you guys
he's just
are
like,
all
I just want to give her a hug. I just want to.
Yeah.
And he's like this.
Yeah, he's like giving me that intense look, like he's gonna kill me.
Oh man, if he pinned you down, you were done.
Yeah.
He was so heavy.
But he.
Pablo Navarro, born on January 25th, 1967, in the city of Los Angeles.
We lived in an apartment, we lived at the farm, we lived at the house in El Paso, we lived in LA, grew up as kids in LA. I think it's when we hung out the most, because we would all go out and ride our bikes and leave. As we got older, he started going into band, he started doing other things that I didn't do, so we started hanging out less.
Pablo was one of my best friends from college, starting back in 1985, and we've been friends ever since. I don't really remember the first time I met him, but I know that we were both 18-year-old kids away from home and experiencing grown-up life for the first time.
When he was 18, he went to college at University of Arizona, where he gained his bachelor's and master's degree in education. Soon after, he started working at El Rancho High School.
I met Pablo at El Rancho High School. He was the new band director, and I was the existing choral director, and it was in the 90s, early 90s. We worked next door to each other. We shared a building. He was in charge of all the instrumental, and I was in charge of all the flyers.
At this point in time, Pablo lived in Los Angeles and received the Lord while attending First Bilingual Baptist Church. It was here that he would meet the love of his life, Anita Cedeno.
We met at church, and at first, I thought he was like a little conceited because I was judging him, basically. And but then one day I saw that he was very good friends with someone that I felt was very humble, and I just adored them in my heart. And I just thought, I would date this guy. I just thought that, and then the thought went away, and then I thought of it again one more time, and then the thought went away, and then...
I remember a time maybe almost 25 years ago when we were sitting around the table having lunch at my mother's house after church one Sunday. And we got to talking and laughing and carrying on, and we started playing matchmaker, and we said, Pablo, are you dating anybody? Are you interested in anybody? And he kind of like squirmed, and I says, is it Anita? And he kind of like, well, maybe. He says, well, why don't you call her up? I don't know. I don't have her number. So, well, we got it right here in the church directory. So he said, well, I'll call her. He said, well, do it now. And everybody said, call her. I will. The phone's right behind you on the wall. So picked up the phone, and he called her.
And then he called me on the phone, finally. And he asked me on a date, and the rest is history.
He was very concerned because he did not want to do anything that was ungentlemanly. He asked me all kinds of questions about how he should treat your mom, and he was just falling in love, and he didn't know how to go about some things, and he wanted to be as respectful as he could. So we had long conversations about that.
My dad was always puppy dog eyes for my mom. Always. He'd get giddy and excited whenever she said that she would go with him to the 7-Eleven.
Oh yeah.
Pick up a
he was. I would tell. We ran out of milk. I don't want to go tomorrow morning. I'll go. And I'm like, oh, thank you, honey. Come with me. And I'm like, I don't want to go the whole
She says that defeats the purpose.
I look, I'm in my PJs. I don't want to go. He's like, you don't have to get out of the car. can you just come with me and just sit in the car and I'll go get the... And I could see his sad face if I would say no. And I'm like, fine. I would go and he would get all
He'd be like hopping to the door.
Yeah. And that was really
We would always
sweet.
tell her,
Weirdo.
Mom, Dad has a crush on you.
I'd spend my whole life with you, 'cause you came and you took control. You touched my very soul. You always showed me that loving you is where it's at. You made me so very happy. I'm so glad you came into my life. Thank you, baby. I love you so much, you see.
The Navarro family moved to Las Vegas in 1996. Their first child, Andrew Navarro, was born in 1998, and the others soon came after.
We were gonna take a vacation to California, and then from there we were gonna go to Utah, and then we were gonna come back home. And on our way to California, our van broke down, and it was in the middle of nowhere.
Guillermo.
Yeah, in Guillermo.
That was horrible.
And it was miserable, and we had to stay in this hotel that I didn't think was that bad, but I wasn't very
Mom
old.
was crying in the
Yeah, she was crying.
There was a TV, so it was okay.
And my dad was very calm throughout the whole thing.
Always calm, no matter what's going on.
And we had to, because our van broke down, we had no way of fixing it, and we had to rent this super tiny Nissan Sentra with all of our luggage and the four of us in the back of
Squished
it.
in the back, yeah.
Yeah, there's only 3 seats, and the 4 of us are crammed in the back.
But you guys were small though, right?
Yeah.
A smaller.
I think the both of them were already teenagers at that point.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Or maybe, yeah.
And so I remember my dad, I was like miserable in the back. I'm like, I hate this. I keep having to move my shoulders like this, move my elbows. And Dad's sitting in the car. He goes, I like this car. I think I'm going to get one of these. That was just, that's why we had the Sentra. Because
It's just sort of how I started greeting him after a while. Give him a hug and then start scratching his back. Just like with Mom, I hug her and then massage her shoulders. I love that.
And nobody, according to my dad, nobody could do it like Andrew. Because he would ask us.
beg to differ.
No, hold on. No, because according to Dad,
always up to
because
the
according to Dad,
challenge.
I know because I asked him just like in the last few months, he's like, scratch my back, and he goes, no, you're still no Andrew. And then I was like, yeah, I get that, but you know, nobody's really like Andrew. And he's like, well, no.
So whenever I did it, like he'd be like, I need to scratch my back, and so she tried to do it. He's like, no, watch, David, scratch my back. And so I was like, okay, here we go. And he goes, see, Anita, see.
In 2011, the Navarros found a family in First Baptist Church of the Lakes.
I met Pablo nearly 11 years ago. You and your family came out here to visit, and we just had a great connection. Why? Because he's word-centered, word-driven, just like me. We have biblical convictions. And we talked about biblical doctrine, and that's really what started our relationship 11 years ago.
I can remember when he and Anita and 4 boys, 4 boys that were full of energy, came to the church. And it did not take long for them to fit in. And next thing you knew, Pablo was an active part of just the teaching and instruction and guiding within the church.
If I ever brought up the gospel or something about Jesus, your father would almost always have a tear in his eye because he'd always be excited and so appreciative of what Christ has done.
He always impacted people for good, but when he became a Christian, it was even way more so, you know. He kind of reignited the idea that, you know, we need to continue being in our word and we need to continue to grow.
just his attitude that he has with people and always being kind and friendly. So he's kind of taught, like, encourages people to just meet them, and he would always be saying hi to people, and that's something that he kind of taught me, like, be friendly, be willing to teach people, to build them up for the benefit of the church. So he's taught me to interact with believers in a more positive way.
Pablo was, first of all, him and I were working together in the youth leaders here at the church for probably 7-8 years, I want to say. And that's what was the reason why we spent so much time together. But he's my brother in the Lord, and I call him my adopted brother.
As Pablo continued to serve in the church, he placed a great emphasis on the impact of discipleship.
Yeah, so Pablo, I just saw serving in so many different ministries. He was working with the youth. He was doing vacation Bible school for a little bit. He was always teaching. So I knew him during a time where it was just intense teaching of anyone he could meet too. It wasn't just the youth. If he met someone off the street, he would be teaching, and he would be pouring into them. So I knew
discipleship. In fact, the last class that he was actually teaching at the church was the 12 or 13 weeks on discipleship. And if there was one thing that he wanted everyone to know, is that you needed to be one of two people. You either needed to be discipling someone, or you needed someone to be discipling you. If you were not one of those two people, then you needed to become faithful and get to discipleship.
All he ever talked about was discipling people, helping people grow in the Lord, helping people know the Lord more, he really wanted to see unbelievers come to the Lord. He wanted to see believers grow in their relationship with the Lord. And I would say discipleship. Like the way that I inhale, he was talking about discipleship.
If you were to explain Pablo in one word, what would it be and why?
Love.
Loving.
I love the way he looked at me. He just had so much love in his eyes for me all the time. And even when I felt so ugly, I'm sick, I have, bad hair day, whatever. And he just looked at me like I'm the most beautiful woman. And just was so loving. And not just to me, to everybody. He had just so much love for everybody.
Especially those middle schoolers.
Like people at church, even difficult to love people at church. He just loved them like that's his brother.
God loved him. God saved him. And in return, he loved God with all of his heart, mind, soul, and strength, and he loves his neighbor as himself. And he loved his wife. And he loved you and his boys. And he loved me as well.
When I first heard that Pablo had gotten sick and was in the hospital, of course we all prayed for him, prayed for his healing, because we're human and we rely on God and we're at his mercy ultimately. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but think that Pablo's work was done. Since the day he gave his life to Christ, he demonstrated Christianity. He walked the walk, not just talk the talk.
Pablo is what a man should look like when the Holy Spirit grabs a hold of a man's heart and converts him and guides him along the path of mature Christianity. That's what it's supposed to look like.
But what I've also appreciated is knowing, for every strong Christian man, there is typically a very strong woman behind him. And that is definitely the truth with Pablo. And I got to see that really for the first time during this 2 months that Pablo was ill, because Anita did a great job of not only communicating and trying to educate herself and become knowledgeable so that she could help her husband, but also just guiding and directing her boys. And as much as I know that Pablo worked hard and gave everything that he could, I also know that he would have been very proud of just how strong and how much of a support Anita was, not only to her boys, but also to other individuals. She's been a wonderful example through this whole thing, and I know that Pablo would be encouraged and just to watch what is going to happen. And I know that she's going to have a ministry herself where she will be able to help many, many individuals. And so, just thankful that I had the time that I did with my brother Pablo.
I repeat it a lot to myself because I have the tendency to not put value in things. So if that's my normal tendency, I fight it by deciding that I will put value in something. So I make an effort to do something to demonstrate that. As a reminder to myself that that's what I need to do. I put value in that. Right? I put value in my marriage, I put value in my wife, I put value in my kids. So, I know now, because I do that a lot, and I've done it for years, to me, my relationship with Jesus Christ, I get excited when I hear that we're going to talk about anything concerning Jesus Christ. Because I've done it for so long that I want to value him no matter what I hear about him. So sure enough, you don't even need to go in very deep. You say a couple of things about Jesus Christ, and I'm already, my heart is softened. You know, somebody said in Jesus, just this weekend, in Jesus, he went to the cross and died for our sins because of love. And I was like, I've heard that all my life. But it touches me because I decide to put value in that. It inherently has value. Lots and lots of value. But I, Pablo Navarro, the sinner that I am, will learn to make less of that. So what I have to do is constantly make more of it. And so now I think it comes to me very naturally now that you mentioned Jesus Christ and my heart melts. You know, I want to hear his story. Even if I heard it 1,000 times, you know? So when you pray tonight, pray that God always fills you with a love for Jesus Christ, for whatever it is, an overwhelming, abundant love. And that if it's the same thing you've heard over and over and over, that you could be so in a state of rejoicing constantly because you hear about Jesus Christ.